Hi, I'm Gus Kapler. When I reflect on Memorial Day, I hear the piercing screams of pain, anger, desperation, and fear erupting from the wounded that I attended to when serving as an Army trauma surgeon at the 85th Evacuation Hospital in Phu Bai, Vietnam, on the coast, halfway between Hue and Da Nang, near the calm blue-green South China Sea. For a year, I witnessed the devastation of war on body, mind, and soul. These haunting sounds echoed in my brain and were indelibly printed into my memory. Today, I still hear these poignant sounds when my PTS is triggered by noticing a young soldier or Marine in fatigues. In my mind's eye, I see them wounded, bleeding, and gradually slipping into eternal death, as the staff of the 85th Evacuation Hospital frantically work to thwart their demise. Yes, on Memorial Day, flags are placed at the headstones of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country, their life. We should be reminded that anyone who has served, whether active duty, veteran, retired, or National Guard or Reserve, is someone who, at one time in his or her life, wrote a blank check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their life. Since the Civil War, our nation, at times still divided by ideology, has memorialized our citizens' ultimate sacrifices. Factors pertaining to global politics and whether or not the required combat involved was a war of necessity, a war of choice, was not unearthed for discussion because the criterion is death. One should now, in 2018, understand, especially with the airing of the Ken Burns documentary on Vietnam and the movie The Post, which dealt with the Pentagon Papers, that Vietnam was a war of choice, not necessity. A choice to sacrifice our youth to protect political reputations and political capital, not the necessity of defending America as a nation. The United States is continually challenged to pick the right fights. Our leaders should heed George Santayana's words in 1906. Those who cannot remember the past, that is history, are condemned to repeat it. Now consider our continued presence in Iraq and Afghanistan. What about the more than 100 global sites where our fighters are stationed? A few years ago, I visited Omaha Beach in Normandy, France, at low tide, the exact time when our brave and terrified youth landed on those beaches on June 6, 1944. The German defensive forces infested the elevated bluffs about 400 yards from the same low-tide shoreline. They had prepared a devastating heavy machine gun crossfire that was deadly to 600 yards, the perfect killing field. I paced off 275 yards from that same shoreline towards the bluffs, over open beach, before I found a rise that offered meager protection. The Allied bombs and artillery had not hit the beach. Therefore, there were no craters to use for cover, the infantryman's nightmare. Talk about signing the blank check when Gary Stoller, a severely wounded Vietnam veteran, and I watched the same landing in the movie Private Ryan. He exclaimed that every kid who landed on that beach deserved to be awarded the Medal of Honor. They expected and accepted death. That mindset is what guarantees there will always be the United States of America. But there is so much more to military service and signing that blank check besides dying. With death there is no future. It's the end. The last recollections we have of the dead are those of the soldier at his or her last birthday or visit home. The space they occupied will never be occupied again. For the remaining lifetime of each family member, their heart remains broken until they too die. What about the survivors, the veterans? Our nation collectively has forgotten them. Their continued presence and suffering is not meaningfully etched into our nation's mindfulness to remind us of their sacrifices. Veterans Day comes and goes annually without a significant national groundswell rising to impact a change in their discarded status. They become invisible until an aberrant act is broadcast on the nightly news or sadistic gun violence again engages discussion of the weapons with which they were trained to kill and combat. Their plight may come to light when individuals and groups are televised struggling to complete 20 push-ups to remind us of the 20 veterans a day who kill themselves in a last attempt to finally exorcise their demons. Our nation trains our youth to become the best warriors in the world by taking advantage of the fact that their brains are functionally adolescent. The military inductees' average age is 22 years. This basic training methodology is appropriate, for they are better equipped to prevail in combat, survive, and return to safety. The unintended consequence is that they are not reprogrammed to reintegrate into a peaceful society. Many are not capable of returning to socially acceptable functionality. Download the song Soldiering On from YouTube, which was written by a Marine veteran, Jennifer Marino, and sung by Mary Guthrie. Its words point out how the attitude that can save your life in wartime, quote, suck it up, shut it down, and don't matter how you feel, are the same attitudes that will eat you alive when your war is over, quote, again, but what saves you in the battle can kill you at home, a soldier soldiering on. Those poignant words are the definition of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Sadly, our warriors are sent home to sink or swim. Our nation accepts the travesty of active duty and veteran PTS, substance abuse, and suicide as a cost of doing business. More active duty personnel committed suicide in the year 2014 than were killed in action during the years 2001 to 2014 in Iraq and Afghanistan. Take it from me, everyone who surrenders themselves to active duty in the military and the military culture cannot avoid being changed forever. All of us develop some degree of PTS, post-traumatic stress, having been traumatized by a totally alien environment, including the military culture. Most of us do return home and resume functionality, but the majority of us must still deal to some degree with a lifestyle anomaly, be it insomnia, excessive drinking, intermittent rage, flashbacks, stress triggers, reckless behavior, or impulse control, and the list goes on. Please, on this Memorial Day 2018, in addition to honoring those who willingly gave the ultimate sacrifice, also consider the plight of all those who have worn the uniform. Seek them out, make physical contact, welcome them home, and most importantly, ask them to tell their story. Just thanking them for their service is far too little. The Iroquois who inhabited these green forested hills bordering on our majestic Mohawk River were wise enough to isolate members of a returning war party from the tribe, allowing them to be guided by their elders in completing the warrior path, to legitimize their actions, to re-acclimatize them to peace, before allowing them to attempt reintegrating into the peaceful tribal society. It is totally reasonable that our nation's governance should consider a universal preventive intervention, as did the Iroquois, to rehabilitate our warriors before they are challenged by returning to our usually peaceful society. The United States Air Force, on a small scale, has promoted this intervention for the past 10 years with major success. I discuss these issues in my book, Welcome Home from Vietnam Finally, a Vietnam trauma surgeon's memoir. Yes, at least $1 billion price tag would have to be appropriated to accomplish this rehabilitation for each and every member of our military. But I believe the totality of incurred expenses to deal with all the consequences of ignoring this nightmarish travesty is significantly more costly by a factor of 3 or 4. It is certainly time for a change in how our nation treats its veterans. God bless our war dead. May God bless our veterans. May God bless America.